Hello everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoin could be headed. Now today we are looking at Fantom. Now up until recently, Fantom has been one of these altcoins that has been kind of lagging behind, and you could still argue it is. I mean, we see recently that it's moved from a low back in October to a current price of basically 80 cents. That's where we currently are, and that's about equivalent to a 330% of a move that we've seen from Fantom. Now we've seen a lot of other altcoins outperform this. Elephant in the room is kind of obviously meme coins. They've just exploded over the last few weeks, and hey, I'm not going into why that is, but hey, we're talking about Fantom today, and what we're going to be doing is basically comparing what happened before the last halving. And if we're sort of going to compare this sort of move again, like we could be experiencing here, you can see I've drawn my W with our 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and back here we had a similar-ish sort of move with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is a few inconsistencies that I'm going to point out. First of all, like our third point here returns to the highs of 5 and 1, whereas here 3 doesn't get anywhere near what we saw with 1. Now maybe 5 is a similar enough price, but it's still way above where we went. So already a few discrepancies. Also, we have less data here, and maybe if Fantom launched 5 months beforehand, it might have launched at a higher price and fell lower. But again, that's a total speculation. So we can say that we don't have as much data here because, Fantom basically launched at the end of that sort of bear run. There's sort of 1 year of terrible price action. Fantom just caught the tail end of it. And as we can see, it got its nice rally over the next few months, which is kind of similar to what we're seeing here. We see Fantom has a bit of a downside, kind of a 3 to 4 type of a move that we're seeing with 1 to 2 here. A bit of a sell-off, but ultimately coming back to these highs and then even higher again. Another thing to point out is that the sort of range that Fantom moved in during this first cycle, we can see from this point here, this low, Fantom was trading at about 1/5 of a cent, 1/4 of an American cent, and it made a move all the way up to 4 cents, and this basically came to a 1,500% move. Now, what we're currently dealing with, and this sort of high has just recently been extended upwards, is a 330% move, from a low of 17 cents up to like now's price of 80 cents. So already we're seeing a definitely reduced volatility for sure. Another thing to point out is the sort of range Fantom operated within in total during this time. So here we're measuring from 4 to 5 and we get a 1,500% move up, and currently we're at a 300% move up from 4 to 5. If we measure from the lowest point to the highest points before we break out of this fifth wave, we basically get an 1,800% move. So similar moves, slightly bigger if you take it from the low to the high. And it kind of nicely lines up with what we get here as well, with Fantom from its low to its high last cycle, or this cycle, last bull run, basically coming out to the same amount. So if you were buying Fantom at these lows, then you could potentially be expecting a move like this if we return to our all-time high. Again, you're comparing a totally different macro environment bull run to a macro environment bull run that's, again, completely different, basically opposites. And realistically, the only thing that seems to be making these cryptocurrencies go up is the inflows from the ETF. And that's kind of brought in a few retail investors, not many, but it's brought in a few. And now it's caused speculation and money moves down the risk curve. We always see this. And that's why meme coins are kind of exploding at the moment, because they're much further down the risk curve. Another thing to keep in mind is this sort of time period, if you want to look at it this way, how long it took Fantom initially to make this move. And again, this was a move through the halving, and most likely if we do get to 28 weeks, it will take us just over the halving, I think. Yeah, so technically it could be a similar move where we do trade through the halving, just translated slightly to the left. Again, it doesn't have to be 28 weeks that we rally up for. It could be much shorter, it could be much longer until we get this pullback. Who knows? If we take a look at how much Fantom had moved sort of last cycle in 20 weeks, we see that it was actually much higher still. We were at basically 700%, 770%. So over double of what we're currently experiencing during the same time frame. So again, we're always talking about it, but this reduced volatility, as altcoins become older, they grow in market cap and it requires more liquidity to shift their price, making their price less volatile. So maybe we'd be seeing sort of a half of what we got last cycle in terms of percentage move with Fantom. So maybe from 4 to 5, instead of expecting a 1500% move, you might want to expect a 700% move, as that would roughly be half. And does that look achievable in sort of the next 2 months or so? I think so, definitely, for sure, if the crypto space continues to trend the way that it is. And could we get a bit of a pullback? Definitely. I think it's probably likely. Again, it doesn't have to play out this way at all. And again, it's a totally different environment, so anything can happen really. But if we are comparing it to 2020 and 2021, which is kind of all we have, this is something you could maybe expect. If we take a look at 2 to 3, however, and see what kind of a move we got there, we got an 800% move. And now that kind of looks a bit more in line with what we could be getting here. So again, it also comes down to, are we talking about reduced volatility, or are we just confused about where we could be in terms of comparing the last cycle? Could be neither, could be both. Just a few points to sort of keep in mind, really. And again, over the next month or two, I'll make another Fantom video sort of checking where we are and seeing if this hypothesis still holds up. Now, switching to the Bitcoin pair, again, we can see a lot being switched up. You can see at the top here, we have time markings of how long we spent during each down, which is the red, and upward trend, which is the blue. For some reason, I didn't match the colors and I didn't make white here and I didn't make dark blue this guy, but I'll get back to that in another video. Just know that these kind of indicate how long we trended up for. And we can see that for the majority of time, Fantom has trended downwards. Roughly 200 weeks of downward trends, 80 weeks of upward trending. And we can see that we're kind of overdue potentially a bit of an upward trend, and this could actually be misleading. We might want to bring this back a little bit, or at least maybe a week or two, because as we see here, we've just broken out of this descending wedge that Fantom has been trading within for ages. Now, technically we haven't broken out of it. We've made a move above and we've made wicks, but we're not out of the woods yet. There's still a potential that we could have a pull down, and Bitcoin is still remaining very strong. So this is not a unreasonable thing to think. If we sort of look at what happened last time with Fantom on the Bitcoin pair, we can see it did just rocket up after the halving. And it kind of did nothing leading up to the halving. But again, this cycle has been different, and we've seen a lot of altcoins rallying long before the halving instead of sort of just before or after the halving. So again, different cycle, different monetary policy, and different bull run that's taking place potentially. So we have no real way of knowing what to expect, especially on the Bitcoin pair. I think we could see something interesting this cycle with the Bitcoin pairs might actually hold quite strong for a lot of these altcoins. Nevertheless, we'll have to wait and see. Sort of picking apart a few of these arrows, this red one indicates how long Fantom trended down for leading up to the halving. Now, this could be something to get rid of, an indicator that's not really worth it, as Fantom has had a recent rally and basically returned to this level that we were at before. It basically double topped, and oftentimes that is pretty bullish if you're getting it can be looked at both ways, to be honest with you. It can be seen as bullish and bearish, so however you want to see it that way. Ultimately, last cycle, Fantom was trading downwards for 18 weeks before the halving. And here we've been trading downwards for a few weeks, only to have an extremely strong revival. And if we go back to the last sort of cycle where we had these 18 weeks, we never had a strong green move like that, never once. It was only after the halving that we started seeing those really strong green candles. Another thing to sort of compare and look at is these orange arrows that I've drawn over here. We can see they're both about 100, or they are exactly 100 weeks, 700 days. And this basically comes from when Fantom first put in a sort of high and then made a double top, which we got rejected from, but ultimately we then followed afterwards pretty quickly and went into our bull run. Now, this could be a bit incorrect because again, it's basically coming from the launch price. So you might be smarter to move it to something like 80 weeks. And if you do that, if you shrink it back a bit to 80 weeks, 79 weeks, whatever, the same thing, you do get a similar sort of time frame. Well, sorry, you get the exact same time frame, but it might be more accurate. You know, it could be more realistic to see us return to this high sooner. Again, it really just kind of depends on how the rest of the space goes. if money keeps coming in from these ETFs, then potentially Fantom might not, because Bitcoin will be quite strong. However, if we see a bit of a slowdown and narrative shifts to altcoins where Bitcoin's had its pump, but people still want to be buying up and force the prices up, then we could see strong moves on the Bitcoin pairs. Ultimately, though, I am still a bit bearish on Bitcoin altcoin pairs. I think Bitcoin is still going to perform strong against most altcoins for the recent future, at least. Realistically, we just have to wait and see how it plays out. Again, apologies for the lack of uploads over the last few days. I've had a few things going on, but I'll try to be more consistent again over sort of the coming weeks. So thanks very much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Comment down below what altcoin you want reviewed next. I'm thinking about doing a BTC video as well, just because of the amazing price action we've seen with BTC and sort of the new all-time high of 70k or whatever that was just put in. Thanks very much, guys. Take care and peace.